morning, everybody. My name is Jeanine George, and I'm the coordinator for the Aboriginal Shelters of Ontario. We started in February 2011. A group of INAC-funded shelter leaders got together and had come to the decision that we needed an organization just for us that spoke for all of our Indigenous shelters. As the years went on, these shelter leaders identified that we didn't have any shelter standards specific to our Indigenous shelters. And although there were provincial shelter standards, we didn't have the funding to begin to implement that. So they got together, and it was just a year ago. They had a 5-day gathering. And the focus during that 5-day gathering was to develop their shelter standards. And the shelter standards would be baseline best practices. We've had 25 participants from 19 shelters attend, and the facilitator had them break into groups. All the groups worked on every section of the shelter standards. The focus was on the well-being of the participants during this time, and on the well-being of the staffing that would be utilizing these shelter standards, and the well-being of the clients that would be receiving services based on these shelter standards. Focus during this 5-day gathering was on the impacts of colonization and the loss of roles and responsibilities within the family. We focused on being culturally safe, being responsible, and having a welcoming environment. And this is also translated into the shelter standards, so that's something that the clients would also be privy to. They would also, have a culturally safe space in any of the shelters that they went to. The staffing would be responsible, and the administration would be responsible to the client, and they would be providing a welcoming environment. So some of the sections are access to shelter services. Aboriginal Shelters of Ontario represent shelters from across Ontario. So we have urban shelters, we have rural shelters, we have isolated fly-in community shelters, where there's no transportation to, there's no second stage housing. And if they can't get into the shelter, or they can't get to the shelter, then their safety is, really at risk. So access, under the 6 sections, there's several subtitles, and you can see our resource, and it's called New Beginnings, and it's on our website aboriginalshelters.ca, and that's available to anybody if you'd like to download it and use it and adjust it to meet your needs. But the access to shelters, so providing service in a northern remote flying community is different than providing service to clients in an urban setting. And what we wanted was, it didn't matter what shelter you were going to receive the same baseline service. So your intake would be not identical, but similar. You would know what to expect. You wouldn't be thrown for a loop. Even the length of stay, that some shelters, most of the shelters don't have a length of stay, especially our northern shelters, where there's no available housing, there's no second stage. The women don't want to leave their community because that's where their supports are. So the other part, another section is residential rights and responsibilities. So their right to service, that's clearly identified. Food and nutrition. So the northern shelters might implement their hunting season into their menus. And that's fine, because that's what they're used to up there. We've implemented a complaints process, something that's fair to the staff, fair to the clients, and with timelines on how things will be addressed. Programs. So the programs will really be different from a northern shelter than to a southern shelter. Our northern shelters provide programming, a lot of land-based programming. So they're out on the land, they're out at their on their hunting grounds, you know, and we don't have that in the south. Residential support, everybody has safety planning, and that's something that's really big, especially in an Indigenous community, because everybody knows who everybody is, everybody's aware of everyone else's business. Someone goes into a shelter and they know that, you know, the community knows that they're there. And the other thing was to provide culturally safe supports. So utilizing the elders, utilizing people that have the language, and ensuring that that's available to the children as well. The other thing that a lot of our Indigenous shelters do is provide service to men with children. And I know that some people find that difficult to comprehend, but those situations happen where the man is the primary caregiver. And he needs those services as well, so we don't discriminate based on that. And I'm pretty much out of time, so I think that was the end of my notes, and I'm just gonna wrap this up.
Perfect, thank you.